Stay. Stay. Yeah, hello, artists. How are you today? Stephanie Aune coming to you from the banks of the Trinity River here near Willow Creek, California. Oz and I welcome you to the studio, and we are very, very happy you are here with us today. So, this will be part 2 of the repair job to Sunset on the Trinity. As you may have seen in last week's video, I had taken up all the gaffer's tape. I will never, ever, ever use gaffer's tape again, and I will never recommend it ever again. I took off all the gaffer's tape. I replaced it with material, and had to go through and repaint the whole project. Had to fix it. And of course, like I said last week, the reason why I went through and decided to do that was because the rest of the book is a masterpiece, and I'm not going to have one page that is going to continue to lose its paint. That's going to not work properly. So in order to make this book be as perfect as I can make it, and nothing's perfect, but as perfect as I can make it, in order to do that, I had to redo this layout. So anyways, that's what you'll see. I'll most likely just see the painting today in fast forward. Those of you who watch me regularly know my color rules, so I might do some talking through it. I'm not really sure. It just kind of depends on how long it took, because I did repaint the whole piece of art. It was needed, so I did it. Okay, guys, pretty please subscribe to the channel. There are a lot of you that are watching that have not subscribed, so if you could do that, that would be huge. It does help for me to be able to be seen in YouTube. But if you don't subscribe, YouTube won't show my videos to people who have similar interests. So, anyways, comment, like, share, subscribe. Those things are hugely important right now. Thank you so much for that. And if you need any of the products, please check out the links that are down in the comments. And if you want more videos, please jump over to Patreon. Okay, guys, I hope you have a great day, and we'll chat soon. Bye. Hey, artists. Well, I have the trees cut out, and I think I have the repairs really well done. Now for the painting part, and before we go into that, I want to touch up these inner edges. Thinking about putting a little bit of glue and a clamp in there. I don't know if I need to. You know, some rawness of the book could be left, I suppose. But then if you're going to do something, do it right. So we definitely are going to touch up these edges before we start to paint over this. So I'm taking the same purple that I've used throughout the book, just because it keeps sitting here on my desk, and actually the Lumiere has a really nice coverage. It does cover really well. Oop, we got a little bit of the book coming apart right there. A little bit of fraying. So we're gonna paint the back of that, and probably stick a little bit of glue in there. But first we want to make sure that it's going to blend. All right, so we're touching up edges first. Is what is important. I hate seeing crimp marks on art because they're avoidable if you just take the time to avoid them. They're avoidable. And let me tell you, when they're noticeable, they're very, very noticeable. Okay, so on this side, we have more of this bronzy color. So let me pull out a browner paint. That's a nice brown. That will color match really well with that. Okay. And what I'm going to do is put a little drop of that brown on here. The colors on the tubes do not always match the colors inside with some of these Arteza paints. So, you know, that red is a much different color than this. And this allows us to fix those white edges. Look at how beautiful that is with that. This is what I mean by craftsmanship. We're just taking that extra bit of time to be conscious of what our book needs to make it look professional, to make it look as good as we can make it. It takes an extra 15 minutes. Sure. But it'll make a difference to the book. Alright, before I start repainting on this, I've decided to just, do a little protective. Oop, that's a lot of paint on there. And we're going to put some green. We're just going to work kind of these both together here. I'm going to try to keep it fairly abstract. I do like this fabric pattern here. We do want to protect our artwork underneath. Okay, guys. I do have a bunch of the Arteza paints out here. I'm just trying to decide on a good brush. This chisel should work well. Let's see here. This one also works really nice, this flat. Your chisel point is going to allow you to make some really fine brush marks, but also broad brush marks. So it's a nice versatile brush. This guy gives us nice coverage. And I think I'm going to start out with him. This is like a 1/2 inch, it's a 5/8 inch flat. So different brushes do different things, right? Right, we know that. All right, first I'm going to try to emulate that. We're going to work background to foreground. It's a little ultramarine blue, very nice, beautiful, cool blue. Periwinkle. We love periwinkle. And we're going to really, we're just going to kind of paint over everything. Because we kind of have to at this point. So let's see if we can establish our light source once again. It was coming from this side. So when your light source is coming from that side, you need to give the mountains the highlight. We're doing this very quickly. We're not going to labor on this too much because the more you labor on it, the more detail you end up putting into it, and that's not correct for mountainscapes. The background needs to be muted. All right, we're going to do the same over on this side. We're going to pull in actually a little bit more of that Prussian blue. Prussian blue is such a beautiful color. It really is. Again, we're going to just kind of plop it in here. Accentuating our mountains. I'm bringing it into the trees because we do want to have some of that going through the trees. So the way that you create trees that are transparent, or that, you know, that feel more realistic, is that you have to give them a little bit of the sky color in the background. Or the mountains, you know, you have to allow them to be a little bit see-through. Which, as this was such an impressionistic painting, I really didn't worry about that too much because, you know, I was just going quickly through it. So we're going to just kind of give a little bit of sky color back behind these. Then we'll build up over the top of it. Like we did last time. Okay. Now, we're going to build forward. Those were kind of back in the dark, which are good. So we want a very blue-green back in there. Something that's not too intense, not too saturated. We want a grayer color. So the way that we gray down green is we add the complement, the opposite color, which is red. And as we add that, it gets us closer to our background squiggly color. We're still trying to keep this fuzzy. Okay. Fuzzy. We need them fuzzy back there to create depth. So now we're going to come back with the layer that would be on top of that. So that's going to be a little bit more saturated color. We're going to have more light and dark in it. This brush is falling apart because it's been sitting in the water for too long. All right, we need to add some highlight into it. Still very subtle. And then we'll build up one more, and we want to warm that up quite a bit, not maybe that much. Bringing this blue or green. We'll add our blues back into it to gray it back down. We're going to add some white. To show that this bank comes forward. All right, now we're going to take that same color and add a little bit more white to it. By doing this, we're still keeping it subtle, but we'll bring that next layer of trees in. We're going to bring this quite a bit more yellow right here because that's where the sun is going to be hitting those trees back there along that river line. And the sun will also be hitting up here. Okay, so if we want that water to go back there, we need to what color? A dark color to indicate the bank. Just keeping it light and fuzzing it kind of back in there. And then we'll have to put a highlight in back there on that water. Okay, so where are we at now? I think we've got a good start on the background. We still don't have all of the fabric covered, but that's okay. All right, coming back at it with fresh eyes and dried fabric, or, you know, it's dry, it's ready to go. So let's work on this a little bit more. Now I can see that my progression, this needs to be a little bit more, it just needs to be a little bit more. Okay. Some of my colors have dried out. Okay, well, it's the next day, and just am checking to see how I like it. Is it done? Could it use more? It can always use more, can't it? This needs a little work right there. You know, looking here to see if I like this, and I actually do like the lesser definition right there, because it's not our main. We want to bring people's eye in, so we need to have the most detail right here in the center and along the edges. I really am enjoying the water right now. That looks a little bit off right there. I need it to come across here. Remember that your needs to be, this is a little bit at an angle right here. So that needs to be kind of fixed up a little bit. I wonder if I have any wet paint left on here. I think this is probably all dried. It is all dry. So I'm just gonna bring in a couple colors and see if I can't do just a touch more fine tuning on this. Maybe a little bit more darkness back in here. We want higher contrast in our foreground, maybe some sticky shapes. This, I really do like this painterly effect right there. This can use a little bit more detail because it's in the foreground, so we need to have that come in front of this and of this. This might need a little more highlights up in here. So this is just going to be a sprinkling of color left on this. One thing that I kind of do want to do is give these bushes just a little bit more detail to them. Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to really be able to do too much with that. I think it's okay because it actually goes with the rest of the cutout. And, you know, I could really start fussy cutting on this. But I think I kind of like these more abstract shapes. So that's what I'm going to work on next, is just doing just the final touches back here. I like how this goes off into the distance, but the blue does take you back in there. We might need one more little tiniest stroke right there to really get that, again, a horizontal, horizontal line. We need to kind of define that just a touch more. We're very close though. And this will just be like the final detail touches, which, you know, with any painting, this painting actually went really quick yesterday for a painting, which is cool that it went that fast. So we're just gonna play around with some of this, add a few more detail leaves like these guys up in here in our foreground, because we need to have more definition up front, and that's gonna push the depth even further. I think the colors are pretty darn good. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna get some paint on my palette and we're gonna go from there. Okay, so I'm taking this is kind of a smaller script brush. Basically what these are for are to load up with paint, and you just kind of make some, you take your color and you have to make it to where it flows easily off the brush. We're gonna add a little bit of blue to that. That's a raw umber, I think, and ultramarine. See how nice dark color that is? So that's gonna be really contrasty. See how I'm twisting it to get a nice fine point on it? Might be too contrasting. We start from the bottom and work our way up. Because that's where the most paint is going to be, right? because of the way that the bushes are formed and shaped. I just want this to kind of look like a dead bush that's there. Do you see how that just twists off the brush? Now, I don't have a nice smooth canvas, so, you know, it's not picking up all of the bumps in there. That's too watery. It'll be just fine, but kind of more of a stumpy stump than a... We can put some branches back in here too. And all trees kind of always have this little dead branches hanging out. Now you can also make your branches a little bit lighter for contrast. The way that I'm doing it leads the viewer's eye back into the painting. We're adding more detail to the foreground. But not to the absolute foreground, because we don't really want our viewer to notice that as much. Although when you open it, it should make sense. Now I will be going over these, of course. I think that's a great spot for a good old dead limb right in there. Right in here, good old tree base. The tree grows up from the river. We're gonna have a little pathway back in there so that you can come through that forest. All right, let's add a little bit of green into that. And a little bit of gray. Lighten it up here a little bit. Always, oh, I didn't grab any white. So we're just going to kind of define this tree here by adding some darkness back in there. And define this little bush by adding darkness and contrast. And then we'll add highlight over the top of that when we get to that spot. Very nice. All right, so then to do it in the background, you need to lighten it up and gray it up even more. While still being a dark color. And we're still thinking of where our shadows will be at. All right, if we want that background to sit in the back, we have to make it bluer and grayer. If we want to define this, we need to add in some more shadows or some more bits of blue. Because this tree is see-through. And trees are light and airy. And they have very definite shapes to them. All right, to warm that up to create a highlight. We still have to create a highlight that's a blue highlight so that it sits back in the back. We do not want a yellow highlight.